Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging community. We're thrilled to have you join us for interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. These insightful discussions and the Positive Aging Sourcebook are brought to you thanks to the support from our Positive Aging community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and discover hundreds of valuable other resources. We're excited to have you with us today, so let's jump into an engaging Positive Aging live and interactive discussion. All right, folks. Well, I am super excited today to have the author of the book, Don't Walk Away. But before we get to know Marilyn a little bit better and learn about some of the insights in her book, I'm also thrilled to have a co-host with me, which I've never had. And it's Margaret Foster, who's the editor of the Beacon newspaper. And if you haven't heard, Positive Aging and the Beacon have merged, and I'm delighted, Margaret, to have you and your colleagues, and we're all on the same team. So before we start chatting with Marilyn, for those folks that might not be familiar with you and the Beacon, let's get to know you a little bit better.
Steve, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much. My name's Margaret Foster, and I've been the managing editor of the Beacon for 6 or 7 years, and I just became the editor of the Beacon in the past year or so. So that's exciting. Our founder and former editor decided to step away after 37 years. He launched this print newspaper that is still in business and doing quite well, I might add. We're in the Washington, D.C. area, Baltimore metro area, and mid-Maryland too. So we have 3 different editions, and we're always expanding, and we're a free paper that's found usually in libraries, senior centers, grocery stores, CVS's, that sort of thing. We have a very loyal readership, and I love working at the Beacon. I love the people I meet. So happy to
I love it. Well, more important, I'm really psyched that we're going to get to introduce Marilyn to the Beacon readers and the Positive Aging community. Marilyn, you've written this book, Don't Walk Away, which is about your caregiving journey. But before we dive into the book, let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to this path.
Well, I grew up in Seattle. My family's been here since 1850, so we're committed. We love this place. Mom had 5 kids. She told us growing up, when we get Alzheimer's, your father and I want you to walk away. There's nothing you can do. I won't know you, so walk away and live your life and don't sacrifice it for us. And we all thought, okay, makes sense. She lived in a really nice continuing care facility with Dad. And so she was fine. And so I was working in the nonprofit arts. And so I've been doing that since I was in my 20s. And I went to graduate school and I came back and there were no jobs because it was during the recession. And in the process, Mom and Dad's memory loss had accelerated. And so my brothers and sisters said, okay, we're going to keep you afloat and you're going to become the family caregiver. You have no idea how much I did not want to do that, nor how ill prepared I was for that. But there were no jobs. And when I say family caregiver, I want to make it absolutely clear. I was never a family caregiver. Mom and Dad were living in a great place. And family caregivers are operating without a net in this country, and they need our support. So it was easy, except that it wasn't. Every time I was there, which was as the minimum, I would hear Mom's words saying, walk away. And so I did not want to be there. And this went on for a few years. Dad died at 89. And when Dad died, we were all in the room with him, and Mom was asleep. And we thought, should we wake her up? She won't remember it, but we did. We woke her up, and I've never seen tears from my mother, ever. And it was just devastating. And the next morning I got there early and she remembered. And the next morning I got there early and she remembered. And the third morning I got there and she was quietly crying, saying, I just want to be with your father. And without thinking, I summoned the mother of my youth and I said, well, Mom, you should have thought of that before you started taking such good care of yourself. And she laughed. And from then on, she put it in a box. She didn't forget it, as I so happily decided, but she put it in a box and she rejoined the world. And that began our caregiving journey. And then I became her care partner. And I think there's a difference.
Well, wow, there's so many things that I'm curious about your story, but let's start with what you ended on, the difference between being a caregiver and a care partner.
Yeah, for me, it was like caregiver. It was somebody who's in need, who needs my help. Um, they're in many ways damaged. These are poor people who need help. And so that's how I approached Mom. And once she started to paint, that all started to change. But at a certain point, I realized that I had a role to play in her life as opposed to just taking care of her, that I had a role to play. And so together as partners, we built a life together, the best possible life for both of us. And that to me is the difference between a care partner and a caregiver.
That's so beautiful. I want to jump in because the painting really was life-changing for both of you.
Yeah.
And these continuing care communities do partner up with these nonprofit arts organizations all over the country. They're really important, and they don't get a lot of praise. Can you tell me about that and what was it like the first time that she was introduced to this?
Yeah, well, so Mother was really bored after Dad died, and so they had this wonderful painting class for people living with memory loss, and I took her, and she thought it was a stupid thing to do. She was involved with all sorts of arts, but never painting, and I didn't expect anything. So I took her anyway because we needed to keep her busy, and her painting was astonishing. It was just lovely. And I was shocked. And when I told her mother, I said, Mom, your painting is so nice. She said, I didn't do that. She was convinced and actually stuck to that for the next 9 years, 10 years. But I kept taking her to the class every week just because it was keeping her busy, and the paintings were fabulous, and I would always grab them, and because otherwise she'd throw them away. So I have all of them.
And then the book.
Yeah,
Some of them.
yeah. And the reason, and the art was so interesting because when I showed her art to people, their reaction was always the same. I had no idea. Because most people think of people living with dementia as no longer there, as lives not worth living. And also, most people don't want to talk about it, dementia. It scares them. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to talk about it, including members of my own family. I don't want to think about it. But if you start with art, and I always used to say, Alzheimer's is scary, art isn't. And if you start with something fabulous like her artwork, then people will want to talk about it. And they're so interested. And then they can actually have a conversation about dementia, but only after they were able to see the human being that was there. And so the art was just, for me, and of course, because I turned the art into a business for the first year, I started a company called The Art of Alzheimer's to share her art with as many people as possible. And I will admit that I was more interested in the art than Mom. I would go there, I would grab the art, and then I would go back and start to work to amplify its impact. And that moment when I realized that I had a role to play is that after about a year, to me, her art looked like it was deteriorating. It looked like she'd lost interest. Same colors, same scratchy lines. And so I got there early that morning of the painting class, and we did everything she liked to do. We took a walk. We looked at the view. We played Scrabble, which we did every day until she died. And then I took her to the painting class, and her paintings completely changed. And that's when I went, oh, I see. I have a role to play in this. And that was the big moment. And the next 9 years, I was her partner, and it was no longer something I had to go see mom because that was my job. I needed to see mom. And becoming her care partner is the single best decision I've ever made my entire life.
Man,
Made
I
me a
love
better
it.
person, made me a better person, taught me so much. Um, every day I learned something about people living with dementia. First of all, I learned it's not people suffering from, it's people living with. Um, and and every day I learned something. It was astonishing. It was just when I would tell people that I would go visit mom in assisted living to relax, they would look at me like I was insane. But it was so relaxing. It was just filled with joy, and it was just so anyway, it was so the next 9 years became the best thing I've ever done.
Wow. You know, you really went through a personal transformation because the person that you started with would not have been relaxed in assisted living. You would have been like all your friends that you throw that out. And I love embracing the arts. There's no right or wrong with art. It's an expression, and what a great thing for people with dementia. But something that I picked up on is how you became a part of this community where your mom was living, and that's something that I think people are nervous about. And I tell people if you want to find the best assisted living for your mom, it's the one that you become a part of the community. You get to know people, you get to know the staff and the other residents and families. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Well, it was interesting because I just assumed this is all part of my learning process. I just assumed that she would be excited to see me because, after all, I'm her daughter. And then I realized that she was far more interested in the people she lived with, all of her neighbors. And she had a new family. And I went, ah. And fortunately, they were willing to accept me as a member of their family. So then I had 6 new moms. And so every day it was just seeing everyone, being with them all. It was just, it was so happy.
I love the part in the book where you, even though you've lost your mom, you go back to visit your other moms.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah, the mom died at 96. And the day, like 2 days after she died, I went to assisted living to see all my moms. And Ruby, this wonderful woman who lived in Atlanta, and was talking to Evelyn, who was 103. And and excuse me, and Ruby was said, she held up this little red plastic flower. And she said, I think about Jean every time I see this. You want to know why? And I said, why? She said, because she tried to eat it. So it was just, even the next day, it was just happy. It was just, they made me happy. And it was very interesting. Once they were introducing me to a new member of the community, and her name was Flora. And they kept telling me, I said, what's her name? And they would tell me, and I would go, Lauren. And they said, no, Flora. And I said, Florin. And they said, no. They were very patient with me. They said, Flora. And finally, I got it. When mom and I were walking around the halls later that afternoon, and Flora came up to me and she said, do you remember my name? And I said, Flora. And she said, oh, thank you. I mean, it was just, it was happy. It was happy.
It
I
gives you
love it.
hope and humanity to think that, once everything's stripped away about our identities, that there's still this sort of spark of humor and joy in all of us. Beautiful.
Well, and that's that we are human beings. We are all human beings, that we share certain things that will never leave us. And that is the need to live in community, with purpose, with friends, with laughter, to love and to be loved. That never leaves us, and that we share it. And we don't,
You know,
as a society, think of people living with dementia necessarily as human beings. We think of them as, oh, those poor things. They need our help. As opposed to, these are human beings who see the world a little different than I do, but we're all experiencing the same thing.
you, uh, I love this conversation because when Margaret and I talk to people that are in the caregiving role, oftentimes it's more the burden of being a caregiver and the challenges of being a caregiver, and talking to you, it's something that it's like, wow, I want to experience this. I want to experience what Marilyn has experienced with her mom, and this this doesn't need to be a burden. What do you have some words of wisdom that I, you share with folks, to help them find this different mindset in the caregiving role?
Yeah, the first thing I always say is, bear in mind, I am not a home caregiver. Those people have a really tough job. But I always said, a friend of mine, I find sharing joy is exceedingly important, and that's very difficult for people. So I said, because when you share joy, you see the person you think might be gone emerge. You're seeing them enjoying themselves. So I always say, okay, take 5 minutes, 5 minutes, find something that you and your mom or your dad both enjoy, and just do that together and enjoy it. And you might find that it relaxes you, makes them happy, and you might want to do it again. So that's one. And the other one, which was really hard for me because I was raised in a family where you need to win. You do not need to listen, you need to win. And so it was learning how to slow down and listen to mom, and to ask questions, and to realize that it's not about me. These are, it's really, it's hard at first until you get the hang of it. So I always tell people, okay, just ask one question and hop on for the ride. And so
Yeah.
for me, but it was slow. I had to learn those. Every day I was learning something new. You know how you always hear that thing about, I became the parent, they became the child? Mom was always the parent. She was always teaching me something, and I just needed to listen and to learn. And that was new to me because I wasn't used to listening. I was used to winning. And even when mom and I played Scrabble, I must admit we were both very competitive. And so it was difficult, for either one of us to lose.
Sounds like she was pretty
Um,
good even in her old age. She was still getting triple word scores and beating
Oh,
you.
well, the thing that one lesson that came really late, this is when mom was about 95 and we were playing Scrabble. And she was saying she couldn't find a word. I can't think of a word. Is dog a word? And I go, yes. And then she stopped and she looked at me. And then she said, sometimes your brain just gets in the way, and made jewel on the triple. And today, even now, when I have a hard time coming up with something, I will stop. And I will say, sometimes your brain just gets in the way, and then it will come to me because I wasn't pushing it. So I used
I
to say
love that.
about mom that she was distilled to her essence. I always felt that who she was essentially was still intact. It was different, but still intact. She was still competitive and funny, and needed friends. It was, she was basically mom. She was still there, just not the same, but still absolutely delightful.
And what a great perspective that I think can help a lot of people that are struggling with the person that's in front of them, thinking that they're not themselves. I hear it on a daily basis. That's not who he was, and they're in there for sure.
They're gone.
Um,
That's it. But they're gone.
they're gone.
One of my
Exactly.
sisters said to me early on, she said, Mom left us years ago. And I said, well, if she left, who's there? And I would suggest that it's somebody well worth getting to know.
Oh man. Um, I, I what has this journey done for you personally in your views, your planning? Like I'm curious, you've gone through this experience of being a care partner to your mom. Have you thought about what what your care partner might look like if you need one? And none of us have a crystal ball.
Well, that's a very scary area because unless you have a lot of money in this country, you can't go to a really good continuing care facility. I mean, they cost between, $6,000 and $13,000 a month. So it's something that worries me, I will admit. And so I think about all the things you can do to slow the advent of memory loss. And one is sleep, which I'm not really good at, and one is diet, and one is hearing, and one, which is really important, which I'm doing really well at, is to not live in social isolation. It's to have a community around you. And because of mom, I am now working in a field that is, in fact, I work for Maud's Awards for Innovation in Alzheimer's Care. And I met him because of mom's art. And I was talking about her art. And he approached me and said, I have this idea. And I wrote back to him and said, okay, I have a grant due on Friday. I will get back to you on Friday, I promise. And on Friday, I get this email from him saying, your silence is deafening. And I said, it's there. It's there. Look in your spam. It's there. So 2 hours later, I got an email saying it's there. And so from then on, that was in 2019. And so every year we give away $100,000 for innovations in Alzheimer's care. And his original idea was he was looking for ways to make his wife, Maud, her life happier and more fulfilling. But he also wanted to share that with as many people as possible. And so I'm very lucky that I work in what I call, what we in the biz call Alzheimer's biz, that we all are working together to build better lives for people living with dementia. And I'm a much nicer person than I used to be. I listen, actually, which was a shocker for me. And I have become a happier person. With mom, I learned she gave me this blueprint for how to live a life, which was to slow down and listen and to ask questions and I learned how to do all those things, but I also learned how to love and to be loved. Because in our family growing up, the word love was never spoken, ever. Have you ever met a Scottish Calvinist? In Scottish Calvinism, there's a certain number of the elect who are preordained to go to heaven. And so every Scottish Calvinist you will meet is absolutely convinced that they're among the elect. And so to be worried about this is an indication that you don't think you're a member of the elect. So you just don't talk about it. So we had rules about death in our family. One is that there were no funerals, there were no memorial services, and there were no tears. Basically, it was like next. And I know my family is not heavy into Scottish Calvinism, but that really focused mom's life was molded by that. And so I've learned how to enjoy life.
Man, holy cow. Well, I could talk to you all afternoon. I mean, this is amazing. I don't know how you feel about this, Margaret, but we've got an incredible individual here. I I have one final question for you, I guess, from me, but Margaret, you might have a few more. Is related to that, you had this family tradition uh, of no funerals, no memorial services, and did you did you carry on that family tradition when your mom passed?
Well, it's interesting. I have been to one funeral in my entire life. Um, and it's not that we're carrying it on, it's just that people in my family live forever. And most of the people I know, rarely have funerals. But it was for me, I did I'm open to the idea of grief, which I wasn't before. Um, but it's just if you're closed off emotionally, then you're not open to other people. So I have opened up emotionally, and so I'm a better, happier person.
That was probably pretty hard to make that transition. With many of us have family traditions and sort of cultural norms that we just feel like we're following, but you've broken the mold in several areas here.
Well, with mom. And in fact, I will tell you that the best compliment I've ever received in my entire life came from Gloria, one of my adopted mothers. And so one of the things I started doing when I visited mom, I started giving everybody shoulder massages. And I would always ask first, and they wouldn't necessarily know what a shoulder massage was, but then would see the person next to them going, "Oh," and then they'd want one. And so one day, after a couple of years of doing this, Gloria came up to me and she said, "Do you tuck your wings in a handkerchief when you're not here?"
That's beautiful.
So, with that happening to you every day, something wonderful, you can't help but learn and be happier.
Man.
Yeah, you allowed yourself to be loved by people who are ordinarily dismissed from society.
Right. That they're no longer there, that they're not worth it, that they're gone, and they're nothing, it's not to be afraid of. And I didn't read books about dementia for the longest time because they were so incredibly depressing. They were so sad. Whereas mine's sort of unusual because it's happy. Um, we laughed all the time, Mom. Um, and so it's, I learned how to enjoy people living with dementia. And I
It's a
learned in the
very,
process.
it's a very funny book, and it's joyful, and your mom's art is in there. And I can't
Isn't it great?
I can't thank you enough for writing that and for rescuing some of her paintings and just sharing this with a lot of other people. It's going to do a lot of good in the world. Thank you.
I hope so. I hope so. And that's the hope. And then it will change how we as a society help change how we as a society value and understand people living with dementia, that they are valuable human beings who deserve and need our assistance to thrive and to live with happiness.
And who we can learn from. Mhm.
Yeah.
Marilyn, how do I pronounce your last name? I'm so sorry.
Raichle, German, Raichle.
Marilyn Raichle. And the book is
Don't Walk Away, A Care Partner's Journey.
beautiful. Lovely.
Love it. Man, this has been a great discussion, and we'll put all of the links to the book and the Maud Awards. I'm really excited to promote that more for you. That's a
Oh, good.
wonderful program, and actually would love to have you back on, and we can talk about those awards. Maybe spotlight some of the award winners.
Sure. And in fact, awards opening on March 13th. I mean, the applications open on March 13th, and they're really simple. And the thing is, they're not grants, they're awards. So it's an award for something you've done, and anybody can apply.
I love
Organization, individuals, for-profit, nonprofit.
it. We're gonna scream this from the rooftops and get some really uh recognize some real innovators out there in this space. So,
Wonderful. Thank you.
all right. Well, thanks so much, and we definitely look forward to our next chat, which I'm sure we will have.
Thank you. It's very nice to meet both of you. Appreciate it.